Click for IB Biology. We're looking now at other factors affecting the community structure, community interactions. These include top-down and bottom-up factors of community interaction, otherwise known as trophic cascades. And then that's our first one. Our second one is the phenomena of allelopathy. There's a blank of this presentation, a blank PDF that you can annotate with your own notes. That's linked into the description. There's also there 10 questions with answers. There's a channel link which gives you a structure of an AI prompt which will allow you cut and paste that into a chatbot, and that will give you some individualized support in your learning of this topic. So top-down, bottom-up control of interactions within our community. The top-down control is very much known as the Trophic cascade. The famous example of this is the introduction of wolves into Yellowstone National Park. So this top predator was reintroduced. It'd been culled by hunting there, but then was reintroduced. And as the population of wolves increased, what was noticed was that this top level, trophic refers to a feeding level, so this top level predator was having effects right at the bottom of the trophic structure, right at the bottom of the food chain, if you like. And indeed, it is argued that the presence of the wolves affected the abiotic structure of the habitat. And this is covered in a tremendously good video called How Wolves Changed Rivers, and I have linked that video into the description because this is an excellent, very short video which will give you an excellent understanding. And in this particular case, the wolf was restricting the number of deer. The deer would then reduce by bringing the deer number down. This allowed plants around the riverbeds to establish themselves. The trees grew better, so the diversity of animals within the trees increased, and the richness of the food webs developed as a consequence of putting back the top predator. And so this is shown in considerable detail in How Wolves Change Rivers, a 3-minute watch linked down in the description below. We can have effects on ecosystems starting at the base of the food chains as well with our producers. And we've already mentioned with respect to legumes and nitrogen fixing behavior, but we also find this in other types of plants where we have nitrogen fixing, perhaps occurring from a different point of view, not with the use of bacteria, but with the sundews operating on what they do is, you perhaps recognize this feature here of these sticky structures like this, and insects stick to this glue-like material, and the leaves fold around the insects, and then there's extracellular digestion, and the plant is able to absorb nitrogen and nitrates from the digested bodies of the insects in a way so that this means that they can grow in locations which are nitrogen poor. So this is a different strategy to the legumes and the nitrogen fixing bacteria. Here the sundews and the butterworts are actually catching insects, digesting them extracellularly and obtaining their nitrates from insects. Some people call these carnivorous plants, which is somewhat overstates their carnivorous their role, but it is a bottom-up effect, because with plants in this location, then it's possible to start building from the producers. We can start building chains of herbivores and carnivores on top of that, so that we can have complex food webs in these nitrogen poor soil locations. Our final impact is a very interesting effect in which plants are able to compete with other species through what's known as allelopathy secretions. They secrete chemicals, and in an example here, in this particular one here, we have Tectonus grandis, is the teak tree, which is a local example we have here. And look at the bottom of the tree here. And what's happened is that the rainwater has washed chemicals from the leaves and from the trunk of the tree, and it's permeated the soil at the bottom. And the chemicals in the soil prevent the germination of other plants. And in that way, the teak tree is able to outcompete those plants so that it takes most of the resources of the nutrients for itself. This is also seen in European regions with the yew trees. Yew trees are commonly within the United Kingdom, particularly England. Yew trees typically are grown in graveyards. There's a strong historical story which goes with this, that graveyards in the UK used to be the only places which had fences around them and that excluded herbivorous animals. And so the yew trees were able to grow within these graveyards. And the reason the yew trees were there was to provide the wood for bows and arrows back in the days when those were military weapons. But the yew tree, underneath the yew tree, you see these regions where there's no plants growing. And this is yet another example of allelopathy, in which the competitive species are outcompeted and excluded by preventing them from germination. Antibiotic secretion is well known in the microbial communities. Of course, we are all aware of penicillin and the story of penicillin, which is treated elsewhere in the videos on this course. But you may recall the story of the discovery of penicillin when growing on an agar plate, which was inoculated with bacterial growth, like so. The researchers expected to see the bacteria growing a colony across the entire plate, but when observed, they noticed zones of clear regions like this where the bacteria had not grown. And the reason for that was that inside these clear zones, the plates had been contaminated with fungi. So the fungi was producing a chemical which now we call antibiotics, and the antibiotic was killing the bacteria. So it's a kind of competition between the fungi and the bacteria, which was discovered in laboratories by accident, which is Fleming, and the discovery of penicillin that you can read about. And I'll put another link to that in the description. That's the last video with our interactions within the community. Here's a link to the channel so you can subscribe, and of course to our playlist of populations and communities.